So yeah, VTM's not lying to you when they sort of are trying to invest you in the notion of storytelling. So I would really focus on your sort of storytelling chops. Improv, I think, is a very handy sort of core understanding to have in Vampire, and that is quite simply the principle of yes and, right? Like that's what improv is, boiled down to a simple thing. Now, you got to keep in mind Vampire most often should be viewed as a game of personal horror. So the urge for a lot of people is to blow out the game to these huge grandiose plots. There's a death cult and they're trying to summon an ancient Cthulhu dragon. You know, some stuff like that. You want to keep it personal, and personal is about stakes. So really take your time to like sort of meet and learn the characters of people that are going to be playing in your game. You know, certainly build your world, whatever narrative. I'm sure you have an idea of what narrative you'd like to tell. If you don't have an idea of what narrative you'd like to tell, I always say top off on inspiration. Read books that you like, watch an anime that you like, watch some horror movies. You know, the Daybreakers, for instance, great horror flick to check out if you want to get an idea of some vampire type like plot. Heavier on the action side than the personal horror, but should get the juices flowing. I mean, really, it's for me.
Unbelievable.
Every game and every person is going to be a little bit different. Every RPG, doesn't matter what it is, they're all going to take on a different complexion depending on who's playing in your game and what they're playing that day, week. With Vampire, it's really important to do some extra homework on what your players are. Dungeons and Dragons, you can tell your story about a dragon and a dragon horde with a town, and you can get a really compelling and straightforward adventure from just like the combat conflict, right? Conflict that is a combat really helps break up the narrative pretty decently. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, stakes. Yep. Nope. You're listening, Caleb. Combat in a Dungeons and Dragons game kind of can step in for character conflict because, okay, you're talking to people in the town, they have a problem, so conflict is introduced. How do you solve the problem? Oh, well, I think I last saw the thing that I need, the MacGuffin, over there. And then the party goes, they look over there, it's a rowdy goblin, I'm not going to tell you where the thing is, aha, and they try to fight you, right? Like, there's... You know, so like instead of having to have like an investigative conversation with the goblin, which you can certainly have, and that's the way when your D&D games are going to have more than a surface level enjoyment. You're going to get some deeper enjoyment when your villains aren't cardboard cutouts and every scene serves to get you to the next combat conflict. You need to sort of unhinge that from your mind and think about character conflict. Scene to scene, what does every character in the party want? What does the coterie want? Should be sort of like some overarching goal. Basic vampire stuff is you have a new coterie in the town and they want to be in control of the Camarilla, right? Camarilla being the sort of like the nobility hierarchical system equivalent that tends to rule over the direct fief or town they're in. So basic coterie conflict. Boom. They want to rule Chicago. Okay? Everyone in the party is at character creation is on board with that. This is a game about becoming the head of Chicago. Okay? So now you have like your sort of like campaign or your main first arc. That's a place to get everything on board on the same picture. Like it can change and develop over time as your story develops, but get everyone on the same page, really. Is this going to be a Sabbat game? Is this going to be a Camarilla game? Is this going to be an Anarch game, right? And then from there, within the Anarchs, within the Camarilla, within the Sabbat, what do you want to do? Okay? Get everyone in the coterie, all your players, on the same page there. And then each player is going to have their own individual conflict, or their individual ambitions, right? What do they want? Okay, so I really do recommend. They have in the beginning the reason I'm on my PDFs is my actual vampire books are all upstairs in my headboard and my partner's sleeping. The they recommend doing a character web. This is a basic writing technique I do in my writing. Do that. They do something that's really cool where they basically say, hey, everyone in the coterie, how do you know each other already? Pick like 2 friends and a rival. So who's a rival within your own coterie and why, right? Like, so really asking those next level second questions. Not only what does the character want, who do they know in the party, why do they know them, who are their friends, who is their rivalry, why are they a rival, right? So this is just giving you tools, extra stuff to sort of yes and as you play the game. So you got to do your legwork up front. If you've ever run any D&D game, you know you've got to do your legwork up front as a GM. You understand this. You just got to, again, you got to sort of deprogram and sort of shift the alignment on where your legwork's going. You're not going to waste a ton of time on writing up that goblin's stats. You're going to be thinking about the shady bartender and how he's secretly running a like sort of vampire brothel in the back, and he's got to keep it secretive from like the prince of Chicago because they're okay with the Camarilla and the Sabbat and the Anarchs, all who have the password hanging out there. But if the prince finds out, he's gonna send in some heavies to take out the place. Like, so you start to, well, okay, so now I know what this bartender's agenda is. Doesn't want to get known by the prince, and now you have this party, and where do they fit in, right? Like, so you really just, again, it's to sort of divorce yourself from the old thoughts of encounters being strictly combat. Start thinking of conflict in terms of what does the coterie want? That's your overarching plot. What does the coterie want? What's stopping them from getting it, right? Every scene, every time. Now, the thing about the big plot of your game, this differs person to person, but I find the big plot I usually keep like an umbrella. It comes in and out of the game as I need it, but it's not the overriding drive scene to scene, because my characters are my overriding drive scene to scene. If I need to tie them back to the overarching plot, I literally have a note on somebody's front doorstep at the end of the session. It says, hey, the prince wants to see you. Boom. That's the old plot coming to knock on your door, right? You let the players live in your world. Again, personal horror. Keep it zoomed in on them. So, it's very important. It's very important to be very mindful of the nature of personal conflict. Again, coterie conflict is a little bit bigger, zoomed out, and you only use that when we need to. And as GMs, as STs, we can always have the big conflict knock on the door at any time. Again, overt stuff. A friend they haven't seen in a while shows back up, and they're shaken up. They're like, what the heck? Like, what the heck's going on, man? Like, I haven't seen you in years. Like, I know, man, but this shit happened. I saw the prince doing something. And what was the prince doing? You know, like, end it right there. Boom. That gives you time to develop your session for the next time. Like, you want to, again, the big plot, that's a lot easier to deal with. Again, you can be overt, use every trick, technique, every trope, every cliche in every horror movie, every action movie, any book, any anime. You're driving on the bus, you overhear someone's conversation, or you're riding on the bus, you overhear someone's conversation, they say something really weird, write it down in your notepad, boom. You can always tie stuff back to your big plot. Super easy. The stuff that's harder is the character narrative. From there, you're going to use your story, your character web. From there, make sure your players are making characters that they've thought about, not just the what, but the why. Like, what is their character? Cool. Why is your character like that? What do they want? Why do they want it? Right? You always want to be asking that second question. Yeah, you can make a game off Casino Royale, no problem. Oh yeah, Combat's a Texas Hold'em poker game. You know, and again, always be wondering what the stakes are. You know, the conflict and the horror are going to come from the stakes. Are the stakes if, you know, you lose in this scene, you're gonna get eaten by the prince? Is that the stakes? That seems, again, that's really high. But is it? Well, if you lose here, you have something that are called touchstones in Vampire the Masquerade. Is one of your touchstones going to get thrown in prison? Thrown in jail, picked up by the cops? Well, if they're picked up by the cops, that's not good. they're picked up by the cops, the cops might pressure them and they might talk about how vampires are real. And if they find out that vampires are real, maybe the cops don't believe them. But the Second Inquisition, this sort of like Big Brother NSA style, like it's the worst of the NSA, the CIA, and the Spanish Inquisition, and the Salem witch trials, all looking for fucking vampires at all times, right? That's the Second Inquisition, the SI. Well, yeah, okay, the cops don't. The cops don't fucking believe your touchstone, your friend that got picked up by the cops. But, like, an SI mole found out about it, and then now your characters have a literal Agent Smith from the Matrix knocking on their fucking door. You know, if they mess up, their haven gets raided by the SI. Think about stakes. And I recommend you try to keep the camera on the party, as close to the party as you can. Don't always be zooming it out on these big, grandiose, like, huge things. You want it to keep the stakes, to keep the horror real. You keep the stakes personal. You keep them close, and that just comes from like sort of making sure your party puts in the prelim work, understanding the party's prelim work. As a GM, I always believe in a direct sort of hands-on approach. Get in there, give them ideas, yes, and them in the character development. If they're like, oh man, I'm thinking about playing like this character who's like a drifter. And you're like, oh, okay, a drifter. And then like, yeah, I was thinking like doing this or that. And you're like, well, how about a biker gang? And not only is it how about a biker gang, specific biker gang. Why does this one matter, right? Be specific when you can be. Be as specific as possible. It helps you write a better story. Yeah, no one expects the Second Inquisition. Yeah. So I hope that helps you. I really do I hope it helps you. You can always use combat as a shorthand for conflict on your lazy days as a GM. We all have them. Combat is really handy to jump in for conflict when you need it. Character conflict should be what you're focusing on. Every session, you go in, write a couple bullet points. What's tonight about? Premise. What does the party want? This. What's stopping them from getting it? That. Every night. 1, 2, 3. Every night. Every game. And that should be... And every one of these questions and answers should be as specific as possible, but open-ended. So that your party has room to grow and breathe and explore your narrative. I see you stopped my first Inquisition, but you walked right into my trap card, my second Inquisition. Like... Yeah. I hope that helps. I hope that helps a lot. Vampire, I've been in love with the World of Darkness since I was a rowdy teenager in the middle schools.